Yeah, I know, it's crazy. You probably won't believe a word I'm saying. But I swear every bit of it is true. You want to know how I found myself in this situation? With this job? You might want to sit down for this. It's a bit of a long story, but I'll try to make it interesting for you. The persistent drip, drip, drip of the leaky faucet was the soundtrack to my miserable existence. Like Chinese water torture, each drop magnified my despair as I sat alone in the dilapidated one-room apartment I called home. Bills were piling up on the scarred wooden table, final notices in angry red lettering. The fridge contained only a shriveled lime and a few drops of stale milk. Through the paper-thin walls, I could hear my neighbors screaming at each other, violent threats muffled by grimy plaster. This was rock bottom. It was never supposed to be like this. Just a few years ago, I had been on top of the world, a good job, a nice apartment in the city, and a bright future ahead of me. Then, in one cruel stroke of misfortune after another, it had all been ripped away. First the layoffs at work, then the injuries from the car accident preventing me from finding a new job. The ever-mounting medical bills had drained my savings entirely. By the time I recovered enough to work, my resume now sported a gaping hole, and no one would hire me. And so I had ended up here in this pitiful excuse for an apartment in the bad part of town, struggling to even make rent. As I sat wallowing in despair, there was a knock at the door. I considered ignoring it, but then I heard the landlord's gruff voice. "Open up. Rent's past due again." Reluctantly, I opened the door. My obese landlord wheezed on the landing, his flabby neck dripping sweat onto his stained shirt. "I want my money today or you're out on the street," he bellowed, rage contorting his features. "Please, just give me a few more days," I pleaded shamefully. He laughed cruelly. "More time? You've said that for months. I've had it with your excuses." He poked me in the chest with a meaty finger. "Have my money by tonight or you're gone." The door slammed shut, leaving me slumped against it in defeat. Tonight? Impossible. I was well and truly out of options. Numb with despair, I drifted to the single small window and looked out over the gloomy alleyway 4 stories below. I contemplated the unthinkable, ending it all. Though even in death, my troubles would not be over. My body would probably be tossed into a potter's field. There would be no one to mourn me, no money for even the simplest funeral. In death, as in life, I was utterly alone. As I contemplated the bleakness of my situation, a hint of movement outside caught my eye. Down in the alley stood an elegantly dressed man. He was gazing up at my window, still as a statue, hands clasped behind his back. Though it was full dark out, I could see he was strikingly pale, with high arching cheekbones. His jet black hair was slicked back neatly. After a moment he glanced away and continued on down the alley, disappearing into the gloom. I shuddered. Something about the intensity of his gaze had deeply unsettled me. Who was he? Why had he been staring up at my window so intently? I shook off my unease. Surely he was just a passerby who happened to glance up. Nothing sinister in that. Still, I could not banish the image of his pale face and burning eyes from my mind. Over the next few nights, I saw him again, always standing perfectly still, gazing up at my window. His unnatural pallor seemed accentuated by the moonlight. I wondered if he was ill. Why did he only come out at night? On the 3rd night, I had had enough. I was desperate for answers about this mysterious man. Wrapping my threadbare coat tight around myself against the chill, I went down to the alley. It was empty now, shrouded in shifting shadows. Turning to go back inside, I nearly cried out as I found the elegant stranger standing silently behind me. His presence was unnervingly soundless. Up close, his pale skin appeared almost translucent. He smiled, revealing a set of disturbingly elongated eye teeth. "Good evening. I believe we have much to discuss." His voice was melodious and deep. I shivered, unease creeping through me. "Who are you?" I asked bluntly. "Why do you keep watching my window?" "My name is Alaric Dalka," he replied with a small bow. "As for why, I have been searching for someone in dire straits who would be receptive to an opportunity I alone can provide." He gestured around the dingy alleyway. "From what I have observed, you appear to be such a person, and so I wish to make you an offer." I eyed him warily. "What kind of offer?" "The offer of a lifetime. The chance to have everything you ever desired. Wealth, comfort, status. He stepped closer. I ask only one thing in return. A gift from you each month. Again he flashed those disturbingly long and pointed eye teeth. I froze. Suddenly it all clicked into place. The pallor, the nighttime visits, the teeth. Alaric Dalka was no ordinary man. He was something else entirely. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Sensing my terror, he raised a hand. Please do not be afraid. I promise no harm will come to you. Consider my offer carefully before you decide. His dark eyes bored into me. I believe it is an arrangement we could both benefit from. I remained frozen, staring at him. This had to be madness. And yet when I looked in those fathomless eyes, I felt my fear begin to recede, replaced by curiosity. An arrangement that could benefit us both? Just what was he suggesting? Seeing he had gotten my attention, Alaric continued. 1 pint, that is all I ask. 1 pint of your blood per month in exchange for granting your every desire. Never again will you want for anything material. 1 pint of blood per month? Was that something a human could safely give? And how could this strange man possibly grant my every material desire? Sensing my skepticism, he smiled. Allow me to give you a taste of what I offer. He made a sweeping gesture with his arm. Suddenly it was daylight, and we were standing in front of a magnificent chateau. I blinked in the warm sunlight, taking in the sprawling mansion, the immaculately manicured grounds. Across the grounds, a shiny red sports car glinted. All this could be yours, Alaric said. The home, the car, whatever your heart desires. 1 pint gets you a life of luxury beyond your wildest dreams. He leaned in. Think carefully on my offer. I will return tomorrow night for your answer. Then the vision faded and we were back in the dark alley. Alaric vanished soundlessly into the gloom. I hardly slept that night, my mind feverishly turning over Alaric's offer. It seemed impossible, completely insane, and yet I couldn't deny what I had seen and felt. Somehow he had transported me briefly to that palatial estate. I yearned for the life he had conjured, a life free of worry and struggle. I thought of the chateau's splendor, the sports car glinting temptingly. Such a leap from my current living nightmare. How could I turn down such an opportunity? And what was 1 pint of blood compared to all he offered? My rational mind protested weakly that it could not be so simple, but the tempted greedy part drowned it out. 1 pint a month and my wildest dreams fulfilled. Did anything else really matter? The next night, as promised, Alaric returned. Hopeful longing swelled in me at the sight of his pale visage. Well, he inquired, arching one brow. What say you? I licked my dry lips and took a deep breath. I accept. He smiled broadly then, revealing those sharp, pointed teeth that no longer disturbed me. I was lost in glorious visions of the life he had promised. Excellent. From within his coat, Alaric produced an ornate silver dagger and a vial. He held out his pale hand. Your arm. I offered it readily. He made a quick slash across my forearm with the dagger and held the vial below it, collecting the blood that dripped forth. I winced but did not pull away. Soon he had filled the vial. Our pact is sealed, he proclaimed. Taking my arm, he sealed the wound with a pass of his hand until no trace of the cut remained. A powerful fatigue washed over me then. It is done, he said. Go and sleep now. Your new life awaits you on the morrow. I stumbled back inside and collapsed into bed, asleep before my head hit the pillow. Dreams of luxury awaited me. I awoke the next evening feeling refreshed, but something was off. Had I slept all through the day? Why was it dark out already? Blinking, I looked around and froze. I was not in my apartment. Instead, I found myself in a lavish canopy bed in a richly appointed room, sunlight streaming in through floor-to-ceiling windows. Throwing back the satin sheets, I got up and drew back the heavy velvet curtains. I stared open-mouthed at the sprawling mansion from my vision. It was real. I was here. The sports car sat in the curving drive below. With growing excitement, I explored the huge house, marveling at the opulence surrounding me. Priceless artworks adorned the walls. Everything was straight out of Architectural Digest. In the closet hung expensive designer suits, coats, and shoes, all in my size. I dressed quickly, ready to embrace this amazing new life. Everything I could have wanted was at my fingertips. I dined on gourmet meals, lounged by the infinity pool overlooking the countryside, drove my sports car recklessly fast along winding hillside roads. It was a dream come true. At first, I hardly noticed the changes the monthly blood pact brought. I was too enthralled with my newfound wealth and luxury. But gradually, I began feeling persistently fatigued. I developed a sensitivity to sunlight, keeping the blinds drawn even in daytime. And though my reflection in the mirror remained unchanged, I realized with unease that my face had not aged a day in the 2 years since striking the bargain. Why wasn't I getting older? Disturbed, I began looking into Alaric's history. In the mansion's vast library, I discovered an ancient tome recounting similar pacts made over the centuries. With growing horror, I read tale after tale of those who had agreed to give their blood, living a brief glamorous life before meeting untimely ends, their withered bodies found drained of blood. I was gripped by terror then. This was no ordinary arrangement. Alaric Dalka was no ordinary man. All the signs pointed to something terrifying and unnatural. I resolved to break this blood pact, no matter the cost. But could it even be done without forfeiting my very life? Could I ever be free of the sinister creature I had so foolishly bound myself to? I secluded myself in the mansion, poring through musty archives and occult texts, desperately seeking a ritual or incantation to dissolve the pact. At last, hidden deep in the library's most ancient tome, I found it. An elaborate ritual to sever the bond of blood. The day of Alaric's monthly visit arrived. I prepared feverishly, using the prescribed herbs, candles, and artifacts. My hands shook as I inscribed the ritual circle on the floor, knowing I would only have one chance to break his hold over me. Promptly at midnight, there was a knock at the mansion door. Taking a deep breath to steady my nerves, I called out, "Come in." The door swung open. Framed in moonlight stood Alaric, pale and elegant as ever. He wore a small, smug smile, as if he already knew what I had planned and found it amusing. Wordlessly, he crossed the foyer towards me, his footfalls eerily silent on the marble floor. From within his coat, he withdrew the ornate silver dagger. "Shall we, my friend?" His voice was smooth as velvet. "Your donation is due." I stepped back, raising my hands in front of me. "No, there will be no more of that. Our arrangement is over, Alaric." My voice trembled only slightly. I released myself from our pact. His smile twisted then into a savage grin, revealing his fangs. His eyes were cold and dead. "Over? No, my naive friend. Our bond can never be broken. You belong to me now." He moved towards me. I retreated further. "You're wrong. I found a ritual to dissolve the pact." His face flickered with anger. I pressed on. "Perform it with me now, and we can part ways forever." I motioned to the inscribed circle on the floor. For a moment, Alaric hesitated, glancing at the circle. Hope leaped in me, but then he threw back his head and laughed cruelly. "Foolish mortal, your magic tricks cannot release what is mine." Then he was upon me, wrenching me close with unnatural strength. "If you will not give your donation willingly," his fangs glinted. I screamed and thrashed in his iron grip as he bent towards my exposed neck, but it was useless. I was no match for his preternatural power. His fangs pierced my flesh, and he drank deeply as I fell into darkness. When I came to, I was lying weak and shaken in my luxurious bed. Blood soaked the collar of my silk pajamas. The puncture marks on my neck throbbed. Over the next few days, I deteriorated rapidly. I was racked with convulsions and fevers. Strange visions came to me. I saw myself through Alaric's eyes, stalking victims, draining them savagely. I awoke screaming repeatedly. Soon I was bedridden, too weak to lift my head. I knew death was coming for me. But then, late one night, Alaric appeared unexpectedly at my bedside. "Still alive, I see," he purred. "How tenacious, but no matter. You will rise again soon to take your true place at my side." He slit his own pale wrist with the silver dagger, letting dark blood drip into a cup. Bringing it towards me, he grasped my head and tipped the blood into my mouth. It was thick and cold with a metallic tang. "Drink. Join me in the endless night." Too weak to resist, I swallowed the vampire's blood. An agony unlike anything I had ever known seized me then. My back arched, limbs contorting wildly as the dark transformation took hold. I screamed and thrashed before everything went mercifully black. When I regained consciousness, I arose to see Alaric waiting patiently. "Welcome to your true rebirth," he greeted me. "You have crossed over at last." I gasped as my sharpened senses took in sights and sounds as never before. I could hear heartbeats pumping, smell blood coursing through veins. My teeth ached, and I knew without seeing that my canines had lengthened into fangs. "We will stay here a while longer till you adjust," Alaric said. "Then we will travel the world together and feed gloriously." He smiled, baring his own blood-stained fangs. I shuddered in horror at what I had become under his twisted mentorship. The ritual had failed. I was bound eternally to this creature of darkness, fated to share his unholy appetites. I had sacrificed my very soul in pursuit of fleeting mortal desires. Now an unending night awaited me, of preying ceaselessly upon humans to slake an insatiable thirst. The price of my foolish pact had been far greater than I could have imagined. Alaric patted my shoulder. "Come, our prey awaits." Numbly I turned and followed him out into the night. There was no fighting what I had become. The human I was existed no more. I surrendered fully then to the vampire's eternal embrace, joining my master to hunt beneath the moon's cold glow.